Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel. So I will be back in my usual filming setup in like a couple days, so this whole vibe is going to be over, though I do find it funnily peaceful considering what we discuss. Yikes. So looking like somebody's uncle on vacation. So basically what we're going to be talking about today is pedophilia. I have difficulty talking about this subject every so often because as much as I think that the world is pretty cursed and pretty grim, and everything we talk about here is not sunshine and rainbows, I also don't like to believe in all this weird Hollywood conspiracy theory shit. The fact that Hollywood is full of Satanists and pedophiles and all that shit, I don't buy it. Do I think Hollywood is majorly fucked up? Yes. Do I think that Hollywood has some weird shit going on? For sure. Do I think there are a bunch of weird, demonic, satanic, whatever? No. I don't think that's a pervasive thing. And if there are Satanists, they wouldn't let you know. I just think a lot of people in Hollywood are weirdos, morons, and sexually depraved. But I don't think there's this huge thing.
Hi, it's editing me. So in this part, what I was trying to explain, upon editing, I realized I didn't explain it properly. What I was trying to say here is that I do think that Hollywood facilitates a lot of fucked up behavior, and I do believe that a lot of people in Hollywood facilitate things for pedophiles. Now, this does not mean I think that there is an organized pedophilia satanic ring, as much as I think there are corrupt people within each production company, whatever, who make things slide more easily for pedophiles. You know what I mean? It's kind of like going to a place knowing one person and that one person can facilitate everything for you, while some people are blissfully unaware. So I don't think entire production houses are in on it. As much as I do think Hollywood's fucked up, I don't think it's as organized as a lot of conspiracy theories make it seem. Aside from that, I think a lot of it is looking the other way, and I do think that production houses do that, where they see weird behavior, they don't want shit to get complicated, they don't want to get lawsuits, so they just pretend they don't see anything. I also think that there is, like I said, a level of facilitating while also keeping a blind eye. It's kind of like someone asking you for a favor, and that favor would usually make you ask a lot of questions, but for some reason you decide not to. I see very much that type of behavior, which I deem guilty as hell, by the way. This is not me saying that they're innocent. I'm just saying I don't think it's organized at all.
The reason why I have this whole fucking monologue to begin with is because we're going to be talking about Drake Bell. Now, I made some videos about Drake Bell. It feels like a lifetime ago at this point. I will link them down below. It was these videos. I think there was more than one. Anyway, this shit. When we talked about Drake Bell, though, Drake Bell was the perpetrator of really inappropriate behavior with a minor. Now, quick reminder of what that behavior was. So I'll link the article down below, but the TLDR is that in 2021, Bell was sentenced to 2 years probation on attempted child endangerment after a young fan he met online accused Bell of sending explicit messages and having sexual contact with her when she was 15. So there was a lot going on regarding Bell in terms of this specifically. I am not excusing anything that Bell did with anything I say here. So everything I originally thought about Bell, all the inappropriate behavior that allegedly happened, my opinions have not changed. However, it appears that Bell himself was abused. So let's talk about that. Drake Bell details sexual assault and extensive abuse at 15 by Brian Peck, explains self-destructive behavior that followed. For the first time, Drake Bell is opening up about being sexually assaulted by Nickelodeon dialogue and acting coach Brian Peck. Quiet on Set, The Dark Side of Kids TV, the upcoming ID documentary airing March 17th and 18th, dives into both the alleged emotional abuse by Nick executive Dan Schneider and the physical abuse by Brian Peck. In 2003, Peck, 43 at the time, was arrested on 11 charges including sodomy, lewd act upon a child, 14 or 15 by a person 10 years older, and oral copulation by anesthesia or controlled substance. But the minor was not named until now. My name is Drake Bell, and I came here today to tell my story, Bell says during the documentary's third episode, before detailing his close relationship with Peck, whom he met at the beginning of season 2 of The Amanda Show. At first, Belle's father was his manager and became uncomfortable about how much time Peck was spending with his son, so much that he went to production and told them, I don't see anything abnormal, but it just I don't have a good feeling, he said. At the time, Joe Bell claims production told him that Peck is gay and said, maybe you're just homophobic and you just don't understand that he's a touchy-feely guy. He backed off after feeling ostracized and eventually was pushed out of his son's life. Because Drake Bell and his mother lived in Orange County, it seemed easier to stay at Peck's home in LA when he had an audition. Spending time at Peck's home wasn't irregular for the kids of Nickelodeon. All the parents loved him too. Everyone trusted Brian, said Kyle Sullivan, who appeared on The Amanda Show and all that. I genuinely fucking despise this whole argument. The concept of telling someone that they're quote unquote homophobic for thinking that someone is too close to their child. Like, it doesn't matter what orientation someone is. If they're being too close with your child in a creepy way, whether someone's gay or not has absolutely no bearing, in my books anyway. It could be whomever who is a human and exists. If they are too close to a child, I'm not just gonna be like, they're gay, so automatically they can't be too close, even if I don't know if that's the case here. I honestly didn't bother checking what orientation someone is, because when it comes to pedophilia, guess what? No one gives a shit for good reason. The fact that they threw out Belle's father and even had the audacity to claim that he was homophobic because he was worried about an adult being too close to his child is just... The worst part here is that if what he said had been taken seriously, who knows how many people could have been saved. Like, I'm not trying to be overly dramatic or, make any assumptions. I'm just saying, if people knew earlier and had taken what he said seriously, potentially some people wouldn't have been traumatized. Potentially this man would have been separated from children way earlier, as he should have been. Sullivan also recounted a barbecue at Peck's house where he had a shrine to Planet of the Apes in the garage and one painting that didn't belong, a birthday clown with balloons. When the kids asked Peck about it, he proudly showed them that it was a gift from serial killer John Wayne Gacy. And on the back was a message: Brian, I hope you enjoy the painting. Best wishes, your friend John Wayne Gacy. Additionally, he showed them letters and photos in the nightstand in his bedroom from Gacy as they'd become pen pals while Gacy was in prison. Your instinct is to give someone the benefit of the doubt if you've known them for that long, even in the face of this really bad sign, said Sullivan. This man who is trusted as basically a supervisor of kids is not safe. All right, so the John Wayne Gacy part, we have some very big problems. Anyone who is interested in serial killers to the point of becoming pen pals with them, other than gathering information, but actually becoming friends, they're not okay, all right? When it goes beyond getting information, if you start relating to them, whatever the case may be, where there's a line between research and emotional investment to the degree where you'd call each other friends, that shit means something is wrong. I don't know how many movies I can recommend to you where the killer and the investigator become too close and shit gets fucked up. Have any of you seen Hannibal? On a serious note, especially John Wayne Gacy, are we remembering his whole thing? Are we remembering his relationships with children? There is no ideal serial killer to be best friends with. Ideally, 0 serial killers you should be friends with, just to put that out there. That, to me, is already creepy as fuck, let alone having his letters in your nightstand. Why are they in your... Listen, I think it's best none of us know. Bell, for his part, also gave him the benefit of the doubt. He spent many nights at Peck's, and then everything changed with Brian one morning. He said, I was sleeping on the couch where I would usually sleep. I woke up to him, I opened my eyes, I woke up and he was sexually assaulting me. I froze and was in complete shock and had no idea what to do or how to react, and I have no idea how to get out of this situation, Bell said. 15 at the time, he didn't know what to do, and it became this secret because he knew that if he stopped going to Peck's, people to ask questions. Peck was so apologetic, saying it would never happen again. He figured out how to convince my mom and everyone around to, anytime I would have an audition or anytime I needed to work on dialogue or anything, I somehow ended up back at Brian's house, and it just got worse and worse and worse. I was just trapped. I had no way out, said Belle. The abuse was extensive and it got pretty brutal. I don't know how to elaborate that on camera. Why don't you think of the worst stuff that someone could do to somebody as a sexual assault? And then I'll answer your question. I don't know how else to put it. Belle began realizing how calculated Peck was, he recalled, calling the entire situation mental manipulation. Since the acting coach knew so many producers in Hollywood, he had the ability to basically go, well, you're never going to work with this person, Belle said. So it was me believing that I would never be able to do this again. I didn't want to risk that. I was doing what I loved to do, so I just kept it inside. Shortly after, he began reshooting the Drake and Josh pilot and said Peck tried to get cast as the dad on the show. Belle recalled, I was like, that is not going to happen. You're not coming anywhere near this show. Soon after, he exploded on the phone with his mom, telling her everything. She immediately called the police and a brutal investigation began. I had to be excruciatingly detailed about every single thing, every time that it happened, with two absolute strangers. The worst part was I had to make a phone call to Brian and get him to admit what he'd done, Belle said, before recalling that the setup looked like a movie as the police listened in on the phone call. I said, I'm really struggling with this stuff now. I'm so torn up. I'm so broken. I'm so emotionally distressed right now. Why did this happen? He just started a full-on confession. He kept asking me over and over again. He was like, are we being recorded? Belle's stress was overwhelming. I was losing my hair. I had these big scabs on my head, he said. These emotions that were going through me, it's relief and fear. You know, am I going to survive this? After the August 2003 arrest, Schneider called him and asked if Peck's arrest had anything to do with him. I was close enough with Dan that I was like, yeah, man, this is what he's been doing. Dan just goes, you don't have to talk anymore about it. That's all I need to hear. Are you okay? Do you need anything from me? Is there anything that you need? He recalled. Brian was spending so much time around me that it was pretty obvious. Soon after the arrest, after a table read for all that, Sullivan claims that Schneider asked parents to leave the room for our friends to speak to the kids. The kids were told Peck wouldn't be there anymore, asking if anyone had anything to say. Schneider told the doc producers that he had no part in telling all that family what had transpired. Peck's sentencing wasn't until more than a year later in October of 2004. I was hoping that the outcome would be that he goes to jail, he's there for a while, and that he would never be able to work with kids again, which would in turn pretty much mean that you're not going to work in Hollywood because very few productions don't have at least one kid on the set, said Belle. That's not what happened at all. When it came time for the hearing in October, walking into the courtroom was the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen, Belle said, explaining that Peck's side was full of supporters, including famous faces. Former Boy Meets World star Will Friedle previously revealed he attended the hearing after he had been manipulated by Peck. After Belle's mother made a statement, Belle took the stand. While he felt he had no reason to address Peck, he did address the room. I looked at all of them and I just said, how dare you? I said, you'll forever have the memory of sitting in this courtroom and defending this person, and I will forever have the memory of the person you're defending violating me and doing unspeakable acts and crimes, and that's what I will remember. One thing I also wanted to talk about here, and I'll link the article down below because I did skip some parts, but another thing I wanted to talk about was the cycle of abuse, because a lot of people talk about the cycle of abuse as in people who were sexually abused as kids specifically, going on to be sexually abusive towards kids. So going from victim to perpetrator. While that does happen, based on the research that I've found, there is no direct correlation on that necessarily happening. In the sense of they have found people who are later on perpetrators of that abuse who were in fact victims of abuse, but that does not mean that they're necessarily related. Does that make sense? So that's from the research I found. I could have missed something. You guys can let me know down in the comments if you found valid research that proves otherwise, but as far as I've seen, there's no actual evidence to support that. In this particular case though, we do have an example with Belle because effectively he was having inappropriate contact with a minor who happened to be the age he also was, because she was 15, he was 15 when Peck started being really fucking inappropriate, abusive, all of that. I don't know how much of a coincidence that is, but I do think it's worth mentioning. I'll also be linking down below other things I found if you want to read more about studies, blah, blah, blah. In addition, there were 41 letters written to the judge, all of which were sealed until now, by friends, family, and colleagues defending Peck's character. Many victim blamed, claiming that Peck must have been facing major temptation or had been pressured and pushed beyond belief if he did any of those things. Most shared how shocked they were by the allegations, and most asked to give Peck probation. Drake and Josh director Rich Carell and stage manager Beth Carell both wrote letters in defense, with Rich Carell saying it would be his pleasure to work with Peck again. I don't know how you do this. I really don't know how you can stand behind someone like that. And I know that there's such a thing as being loyal to your friends, and you don't want to believe that your friend would do something like that. But the whole concept of being so willing to give the benefit of the doubt that you're going to work with them again, it would be one thing to say that you're not drawing conclusions. It would be one thing to support them, which already I'm obviously not about in this case, but that would be one thing. It's a complete doubling down to show up, to see the victim, to still support the perpetrator of the abuse, and then on top of that to say that you'd work with them again? I'm just saying, maybe they should check your hard drives. I'm just saying. Peck pleaded no contest to two charges of child sexual abuse. He was sentenced to 16 months in prison and ordered to register as a sex offender. After his release, Peck landed a job on Disney Channel's The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, working again with the Carells. They told producers of the documentary that they had no input or involvement in the casting of Peck, and that when they asked him about the case, Mr. Peck simply replied that the problem had been resolved. Variety confirmed that Peck performed voiceover work on 3 episodes of Sweet Life, was never on set, and had zero interaction with any cast or crew. One insider confirms that when the network learned of his conviction, he was immediately terminated, and his voice and on-screen credits on the 3 episodes had been replaced. Towards the end, they discuss Drake Bell in terms of his sobriety and the fact that pressure would build up to the point where his demons would resurface. So he said, I think a lot of my self-destructive behavior would always just be a temporary fix, and it would always creep back up, he said, noting that he lost his house when he went through bankruptcy and later got a DUI. There was definitely a slow decline in my mental health, sobriety, DUIs, behaviors that were happening because I was lost. In 2021, Bell was arrested and pleaded guilty to charges of attempted child endangerment and disseminating matter harmful to juveniles. He was sentenced to 2 years probation and 200 hours of community service. I took responsibility for that. I did what was asked of me, he said in the doc. The media grabbed a hold of so much misinformation and it absolutely destroyed me, and I started to spin out of control. So this is a very strange situation to be discussing because it is effectively, I don't know if I'd want to call it abuseception, but it is a question of a cycle, potentially, if you do believe the allegations against Bell, which I personally do. So he was abused, and then he was the abuser, or whatever you want to call his actions. I don't think I've discussed something that has these amounts of levels, which make it all the more nuanced and complicated as opposed to just black and white. That being said, I am sorry that that happened to Bell in the same exact way. I am sorry for it happening to the victim of Bell. It's not mutually exclusive. I can feel bad that that happened to Bell while simultaneously not feeling bad for Bell in the context of him being the perpetrator. Does that make sense? It's like 2 separate things because he wasn't yet a perpetrator when that happened to him. He didn't deserve that happening to him the same way that his victim didn't deserve that happening to them either. So that is the end of that. You guys can let me know what you think in the comments down below. There were people alleging who the other victims are because there are so many allegations against Nickelodeon. There is that docu-series that I mentioned at the beginning of the article coming out. So I guess we'll see. I have some ideas of who I think was victimized, and some of the people, if they are who I think have been very publicly carrying trauma that's been misrepresented as like drug use for the sake of drug use, and really to me it's always seemed like something is off because of trauma or something happened. I don't want to go into conspiracy theories, but I do think that there are a lot of people that might come to mind where we're like, I wonder if these people had to do with them, because these people then had fucked up shit going on. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons as always, and I'll catch you guys next time.